Beth here. Welcome to the Curiosity Cafe. Today's guest is Flip Brown, culture consultant, curiosity cat, and guitarist with a Dead cover band. We talk about how to keep your center in polarized times using his No Emergencies rule, kindness as a practice, and tiny rituals that shift a day. Step outside, cue a song, then act. He also shares the moment a client told him he wasn't listening and how that changed his work. If you want calm that still gets shit done, this episode is your hug and how to.
I'm I'm joined by a dear friend who I've known for almost 4 years. As my voice cracks, I was at a soccer game this last weekend, so obviously there was a lot of screaming going on. Um, but we've had conversations probably every other month or every quarter or every month based upon how life is flowing about just the coolest things about B Corp, about business, about life, about music, about just being a human in this on this planet, especially during these times. And Flip was cool enough to be like, "Yeah, I'll be on the Curiosity Cafe." I believe in the form you filled out that I have everyone do just a couple quick questions. You called yourself a curiosity cat who was
Mhm.
always down for such things. So, um, yeah. So thank you for being here. So we'll hop in and please tell everyone, who are you and what are you about doing in this world?
Well, people do ask, "Is Flip your real name?" So I usually have to start by saying I was named after a character in a comic strip back in the '50s. They were Air Force pilots. My dad thought these folks were pretty cool. He wanted to be a pilot, but he didn't graduate from high school, so he didn't think that would be possible. But there was a character named Flip Corkin who was, I guess, making flip comments. And my dad liked this character. So he didn't have the courage to put Flip on the birth certificate. So legally, I was Philip, but I was never called that. So when I went out in the world, I'm like, hi, I'm Flip. I got my bank accounts, my driver's license. I thought I better truck on down to the courthouse and make this official, which I did. And I flew into Erie, Pennsylvania to see a client, and there in the baggage claim area were oil portraits of all the famous white male aviators. And there was Flip Corkland, the guy who actually was the real inspiration of this character. And I do have a copy of the comic strip and have the guy my namesake. But my father actually did pass his private pilot's license and own a couple planes.
Oh,
So
what
that's
a
the
cool
story.
s I
Yeah,
we've had lots of conversations. I never knew that story.
yeah, yeah.
I never that's
So
a rad story, and you
yeah.
get to go that's neat.
Yep. So, who am I? Well, I'm a traveler through this universe. Currently, I am the founder and owner of Business Culture Consultants, and I help good people and great organizations get more meaning and fulfillment by working together better. And I'm also, as you can see in the background, a very active musician. Actually, tomorrow I'm headed to Martha's Vineyard to play at a wedding with an acoustic Grateful Dead cover band. So that's my other gig, and the strawberries are coming on in my garden. I'm always looking forward to the homegrown strawberries, nice and juicy, and they always taste better when they don't have to ride on a plane from California.
100%.
So yeah, I just am really grateful to have had all the experiences that I've had, and to have all the incredible friends like Beth and the other people in this world. So that's me.
Well, thank you so much for that. Thank you for being here, and I can't hear you talk about strawberries. I also am a strawberry lover, uh, but I also know we both love the Beatles, so it's hard to not say "Strawberry Fields Forever"
There you go.
you at
Yes.
the moment.
Yeah, it is that song, I think it really kind of opened up for me like this you could talk in ways, you could have song lyrics in ways that on one hand didn't make literal sense, but made deep sense, you
Mm,
know, just in terms of the juxtaposition. So, um, but I have been to Liverpool and I have seen the orphanage of Strawberry Fields.
same.
So, yeah. Yeah.
It's a cool I love that you bring up the power of music, at least for myself as well, is that, there's ways of knowing music that are beyond melody, beyond harmony, beyond bass, beyond beat, beyond lyrics, but it's, a composition of its whole.
Yeah, and you live in a hot spot of music.
I certainly do. We are not want for good food,
Yeah,
people, and music.
yeah. Well, all we have is fish and Grace Potter, but I guess that's good enough.
It's good. It's good. Um, so I do this all the time. Like, I'm curious. Um, what are you curious about these days?
Hmm. I'm curious about how to make a difference in this world and not get swept up in the negative energy of polarization.
Oh,
So, I just came this morning, I just turned on the news after 6 days of not paying attention at all, nothing. And it's remarkable how much calmer I felt by not looking at the news. Because, you know, even as a teenager, I would come home from school, make a big bowl of popcorn, and read two newspapers. So I'm always curious about sort of like what's going on in the world. But at this point, it's like a Shakespearean drama, these characters who on one hand are seemingly larger than normal life, but on the other hand are just enacting the drama of their own insecurities. And I don't want to be consistently pulled off center or knotted up in outrage and frustration. And yet I also don't want to ignore the heavy stuff that's happening. So it's an interesting balance to
mhm.
stay centered. But the best I can do is to find as much kindness and compassion as I can for everyone.
Yeah. It's Would you mind sharing, because I think in a lot of my conversations and on myself, there's this, felt dissonance, like you're watching some of these headlines, you're paying attention to news,
Hmm.
people or you yourself are directly affected by things that are happening. They've always happened, but there's an acute awareness of
Hmm.
so many things happening at the same time. Um, what that feels like especially that bombardment of when you kind of had that, you know,
Hmm. Yep.
disconnect with the headlines, the clicks,
Right. Right.
and then coming back into it, and then for you, is that like, what do you do then? Because you don't wanna stay in that state, right? Especially with the work that you do, especially, what you're interested in and how you like to live your life, so, like, does curiosity come into that? Like, is that a tool that you use to be like, "Now what?
Hmm.
It's just
Hmm.
thrown me."
Yep. Well, I think about the time that I actually worked on the mobile crisis team at my community mental health center
Mm,
many, many years ago, but one of my 5 or 6 careers. And I remember in terms of how to work compassionately with acutely psychotic and suicidal people on a daily basis, we would get called up to the emergency room of the local hospital to screen people for whether or not, we should call the psychiatrist to see if they should get admitted to the psychiatric ward. And so being in the emergency room, I mean, I don't have a whole lot of tolerance for blood and guts, but I didn't have to, sew people up or operate it on them. But I learned from working in there that if you work in the emergency room, unless it's a family member or a colleague or someone that you know closely,
mm,
there are no emergencies. You just deal with whatever comes in the door. Gunshot wound, heart attack, broken finger, panic attack. You meet everyone with the same spirit of caring. And that was a valuable lesson. So there are ways to be fully engaged and yet at the same time practice what I would call the art of healthy detachment. So that's what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to be fully engaged in the world, but not get caught up in the sort of maladaptive patterns of people who are working out or actually in defense of not working out their inner stuff. And one of the major dynamics right now is we're watching a large cult play itself out. Now, autobiographically, my mother joined a cult religion when I was about 8 years old. And for myself and my 3 siblings, therapists have made some good money off of that move. But the nature of a cult is that you have a powerful, charismatic leader who says, I have all the simple answers to complex questions, and you cannot allow any disconfirming information to come in because if you question it, then they will question your membership in the cult. And it's just fascinating to see that play itself out. But almost always, ultimately, the members of the cult start to experience that they can no longer hold the distance between the negative impacts of the beliefs and the practical realities of their lives. And then there's a shift. So
Right.
it'd be interesting to see how that plays itself out.
Yeah, and so what do you do? So you have a natural curiosity about you,
Mhm.
and you
Mhm.
have, an your own a very specific disposition that you have chosen and cultivated and own in how you look at the world and humans and the planet, etcetera.
Mhm.
Um, how do you, in your life, especially now, go about what you read, what you consume, what you play, what you contribute to? Like,
Mhm.
how do you use that curiosity that you have and that disposition you have to keep yourself kind of above board, right? To keep yourself in a positive, energetic space.
Well, a couple of things come to mind. One is the power of nature,
Mm,
and that is, I'm sitting here in my office. Right across the street, there are woods. I can at any time walk into the woods and be in big trees. And, these trees, they know what to do.
mm.
They know how to live. And all the creatures that are, surrounding me here. I mean, we have foxes and raccoons and opossums and groundhogs and chipmunks and squirrels and
You said
everything.
you're in Vermont, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
right. And, the natural world, it just operates according to its own sort of inner design. And so, what's my inner design? How do I, as a unique manifestation of human energy, move through this world in a way that will, first of all, do no harm, but secondly, create some sort of contribution to overall well-being. Some of that is being environmentally conscious and having practices that minimize my impact. Some of that is the work I do to be a service provider to help other individuals in the field of business, which then translates into their personal lives as well, to have deeper connections, to do meaningful work, to resolve normal conflicts, and to not take ourselves so seriously, to
Mm,
have some lighthearted engagement and fun. So it's a matter of what does living well look like, not in a selfish way, not in a materialistic way,
mm.
but in a sort of soulful and spirit oriented way. And, far from perfect. I mean, I do have a tendency to like toys. I only have 12 musical instruments. I could probably get by with three, maybe five. I don't know. But, and yes, um, someday someone will benefit from my significant Beatles collection.
Mm,
Maybe you, Beth, who knows? But the idea is that for me, music is also a way that connects me with something deeper,
mm.
archetypal energy that it's beyond real comprehension and ability to describe,
Yeah,
even though they've done all the neurological research in terms of how our brains respond to music. But
right.
it's primal. Music and rhythm are primal elements of being human. And so I just earlier was working on something and I turned around and I'm just amazed I can put this little metal needle on a vinyl platter and this music emerges that just lifts my soul and spirit.
Right. I likewise, I'm someone who music, is a definite anchor. It's an
Hmm.
anchor for how I want to feel, how I need to feel, um, uh, and I'm curious I get do it again. Uh, how does what is your experience with music s specifically in the search or in the practice of curiosity? Like, how do you relate?
Yeah. Well, first of all, there's the curiosity of the breadth and depth of music.
Mm,
I am a dyed-in-the-wool card-carrying certified boomer. So, I grew up with, the music that, we all emotionally bond to music at certain points in our
right,
psychological development.
right.
And I just feel like I was fortunate to have been at the right time, born at the right time, because I was 11 years old when I said to my mom and dad, we have to watch the Ed Sullivan Show tonight because the energy coming out of that little black and white TV in the corner of our family room,
Mhm.
like millions of other kids, within a year, I had my first electric guitar because that energy was so compelling. And then those guys changed my life again when I was 14,
Mhm.
when I got my copy of Sergeant Pepper's. And I'm like, how do you go from I want to hold your hand to I'd love to turn you on?
Right.
That's a big shift.
It's yeah.
And so I'm also very curious about how this music was actually put together. So I just came back from vacation, and this is one thing I love to do. I actually took what we call the box set of the Beatles Revolver album, and it has all of the alternate mixes, the outtakes, the demo of the song. You can actually hear how the song was built,
That's so cool.
and then there's a book that explains, you know, on this song, actually, George played bass instead of Paul playing bass. So I just geek out about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm also curious about other genres of music. And I can say this with a twinkle in my eye, what are the young people up to these days? Because there's so much good stuff out there.
Yeah.
That's just remarkable. I just came across this group called Tiny Habits, and they were two women and a man, two white women and a black man who started singing in the stairwell at college, and their harmonies are just exquisite. And so I went out and bought their album. Um,
So cool.
so I'm curious about both what I know and what I don't know.
Ugh. I I love that, because it goes to the benefit of both breadth and depth, and I think sometimes we can get fixated on one or the other, but
Hmm.
they serve each other so very well. We know that, public funding, for programs such as PBS,
Hmm.
arts funding in schools, etcetera, is usually the first to go.
Right.
There are budget cuts, and, um, in the name of that, can you share what's your early exposure and knowledge of music? Exposure to, experience of, and knowledge relationship to music has meant to you as you've journeyed through your life, both professional and personal? Like, how has it
Mhm.
helped you be curious? How has it helped you navigate
Yep. Yep.
this place we call life?
Well, I don't remember how old I was, but certainly by the age of 10, I had a transistor radio. Um, and actually, I think at the age of 8, they brought in these little plastic things called flutophones. Now, we all had to sit as a class and play these little things. The only problem was I'd already started taking clarinet lessons because my father was a big fan of Benny Goodman. I was way advanced for these little toys that we were
Right.
playing. And so I got in trouble because I was playing like counter melodies and harmonies and stuff. But yeah, I clearly have a natural affinity for music, whereas my brother is a brilliant graphic artist, but couldn't play anything. You know, he got the graphic
Artist,
gene,
it
I got the music gene.
yeah.
So, and then, through the years, I mean, at one point, because the only way that you could have music and take it with you was having a Walkman and cassettes. And so I had 600 cassette tapes. Now, I still have probably around, I don't know, 250 or 300 vinyl albums. And then, of course, we have all the digital streaming and CDs. So I probably have around 2,000 albums in different formats. So part of it is I do have the collector gene. I'll admit to that. But part of it is just there's three good vinyl stores here in Burlington, as you might imagine, and one of them has bins that they put out in front of the store. I mean, you could just walk up, steal anything you want. They are dollar records,
Wow.
And I call them the boomer bins because a lot of them are music that they're not going to sell for, 15 or 20 bucks, but I'll buy 5 of them for $1, come home, listen to them, take them back and get 5 new ones, just trade them in, It's like
That's cool.
rent a record.
That's very cool. That's very cool. Do you feel, I'm just as you're moving through life and as you're
Mhm.
doing your work, um, and you come to points that have that similar feeling of negative energy, overwhelm, dissonance,
Mhm.
um, something that may threaten your equilibrium. What do you rely on to help you navigate that in ways that you feel like you're keeping your own agency, if that
Mhm.
makes sense?
Mhm. Yep. Well, I'm very grateful that after a long search, I found a set of Eastern philosophies and a meditation practice that really, went to the core. Um, because, mindfulness is the ego paying attention, full attention to the moment. But when meditation works, you move beyond the identification of being a single self in the world.
Mm.
And so that ability to just have nothing going on but awareness of the moment without distraction of thoughts or emotions, um, to be in that state of being, and you gain it, lose it, gain it, lose it. That's been an incredible gift. The other part of that philosophy is that, there are many good things about growing up in the Judeo-Christian tradition. And Eastern traditions can also have layers and layers of dogma. Um, Love that old bumper sticker, "My karma ran over your dogma."
I've seen
Uh,
that.
um, but you know, in the Judeo-Christian tradition, there are rules and commandments and sins, and you sort of gotta someday you'll be good enough to get into heaven. Um, but you're never quite good enough. Whereas in the Eastern traditions, they start with the assumption that we all have a fundamental basic human goodness. We just lose sight of that.
Mm.
So being able to connect with the exception of the 0.1% of people who unfortunately don't have the wiring for empathy, and we kind of call them serial killers, the rest of us, 99.999%, you know, we are already good, but the growing up and the things that are put on us by upbringing, by culture, convince us that we're not good enough yet. And so that's been a transformation that's been very helpful. I will also share that 3 sessions of guided psilocybin journeys by a very, very gifted guide um, opened up a sense of integration that I had never achieved before. And I don't need to do that again. I got what I needed.
What was that journey like? What was that search like to get to the point where you're like, "Ooh, that feels good," because that I'm assuming you didn't just Google it, order it on Amazon, it come the next day. Like, I assume that the
Right,
search was an
right,
actual, like,
right.
journey.
Yep. Yeah, and like the vast majority of people, I had some significant childhood and adolescent trauma, and that created a damaged sense of self. Now, for 19 years, I pushed those feelings away by having what I call my world-class substance abuse. Alcohol virtually every day, and then weed and anything else you can imagine. Um, and it's the old saying is true. There's no problem so bad that drinking or drugging won't make it worse. So I was able to stop that pattern because I realized I would never unlock my potential unless I did. And
And that's a
so
major
that,
shift, like, being able to do that is a huge journey itself.
yeah, best gift I ever gave myself. So that was a necessary precondition to unlocking my potential. And then I think that it just, I don't know, at various stages of life, we're ready to approach what has been previously unknown or subconscious to us. In Jungian psychology, the process is called individuation, where you actually become your full sense of self and being. Um, if you don't do that well, we have a name in this culture. It's called midlife crisis,
Ah,
because you use all the skills and talents to get you to a certain level in life or a certain place of accomplishment, and then you realize you're overusing those, and they're undeveloped or underdeveloped elements of who you are that are asking for your attention.
mm,
And you can either integrate those, or you can, you know, do stupid things.
choose a different path, right?
Right,
Continue
right.
as is,
Yep,
as
yep.
is. What are you, what do you see for yourself, but also people that you've worked with over the course of your career and your life? What are ways that people remain in the curiosity spot?
Then, we just are acting out from a persona standpoint.
Mm,
Um, so to be vulnerable means that we need to be able to accept disconfirming information. Earlier in the early days of business culture consultants, I had a new client that everyone in Vermont would know. I can't tell you, of course, but I did my normal cultural assessment and talked to 25 or 30 people working there, produced my cultural assessment report, which typically I would then get a 6 to 12 month contract to do, the work around culture change. So
right.
I met with the company president and I said, so, what are your thoughts about this, my work? And she said, well, this was very helpful. You told some things we already knew, but in a different way, and you brought up some interesting points. And I said, great. Can we talk about, doing the work? And she said, well, no, because the feedback from staff is that you're not a particularly good listener. And, this voice in my head says, lady, are you effing kidding me? I studied active listening in graduate school. I can tell you the components of it. I don't know what in the hell you're talking about. But of course, the only thing I could say was, wow, that's very interesting. I'm going to need to think about that. But thank you for your honest feedback. And it took me probably 2 weeks to realize that at that point in my business, I was so insecure that I was already talking about the next phase of the work because I really needed it. And the only way the staff could process that was that I wasn't fully present. And therefore, I wasn't actually fully listening. It was invaluable feedback. So, there's a saying that comes from Gestalt therapy: don't push the river.
Mm,
And that's what I was trying to do.
I've never heard that phrase before, but it's gonna float around in my brain for some time. That's incredible. I had no idea, like, when you're telling that story, that that was gonna be the comment, and, kudos to you because I think, um, other people may have handled that in a very different situation, but again, coming back to that curiosity of, like, "What can I learn here?
Right, right,
What is it? What can I how can I improve? What can I learn? What can I" you know, be curious about the message as opposed to, like, berate the messenger,
right, right.
which I think is a common knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a quote that I like. It's treat yourself with kindsight. And instead of hindsight saying, you know, what was I thinking or how stupid was I, say, oh, what was I learning?
Mm, isn't that a
So
beautiful, like,
kindsight.
space opening approach as opposed to, like,
Right.
the ego stepping up and, like,
Yep.
putting the dukes up?
So I can now feel in my body when those trigger points are just emerging. And so then I have a choice other than just being swept along by the old patterns.
Yeah, I've done some somatic stuff as well, and it's amazing, like, you can actually pinpoint it and feel it and then name it, like, identify it and name it, and all of a sudden, it's not this wave crashing over you.
Right. Right.
Um,
Indeed.
so what do you credit this natural curiosity for?
Well, I think I think, it's interesting in the world of psychology, the difference between traits, attributes, and competencies. Traits are what you come into the world with. Attributes are things that other people see you as having, and competencies are the things you learn and practice, whether you want or
Mm,
need them or not. But I think it's a trait. I think that I was naturally curious. Um, you know, I've explored so many different areas. I've had different careers. I've been involved in a bunch of different, outdoor recreation. I used to run a windsurfing schools. I was a certified cross-country ski instructor. I did whitewater canoeing. I owned a sailboat. I mean, I can just go on and on and on about I I come across an experience or a field of experience, and then I go deep. Um, I cut back on my gardening this year, partly because we've got deer that are just coming and munching everything. Last year, I only grew 12 varieties of tomatoes. I cut back. And, of course, the risk was back in the old substance abuse days, I was a member of the If Some is Good, More is Better club,
Uh,
which got me into trouble. But, I do have, and the people I work with, we all have our unique variation of what I call the intensity gene. And I know that about you, Beth, that, if I interviewed your family and friends and said, if Beth decides to do something, does she ever do it half-assed? They would just laugh and roll over.
for better or for worse, that those are
Right.
yes,
Yep.
yes, you would be correct.
Yep.
Yes, we tend to find each other in the world, right? Because we're like,
Right.
we all have good stories though.
Yep.
If you come to a party of intense people, the
Yep.
stories are, um,
Right.
I'm curious. Okay, what advice are you giving yourself these days?
Mm. Well, first of all, do the body maintenance, you
Mm,
know? I mean, my spirit, who knows, where that will end up in the universe, but this rental car is got some mileage on it. And so I am scheduling appointments. I'm, going to see the professionals and making sure that, I take care of the vehicle here. So that's one. The second is continuing to be having a reasonable comfort level with the unknown because these are turbulent times, and you can easily create a doomsday scenario. You can also create the idea that there's so much good stuff going on that you never ever hear about. And there's still the power of community and the power of giving and the power of relationships that don't make the news. So stay optimistic because again, most people treat other people well. Um, And I think it's sort of like, you know, any of us could have today be the last chapter of their life, but, I have more behind me than I have ahead of me, just in terms of, the number of revolutions around the sun. So I'm looking forward to continuing my youthful energy and spirit as I continue to, you know, grow old gracefully. So I can't ignore that fact, but I mean, you and I have talked about this. I mean, um, there's chronological age, and then there's, energetic age.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, that advice that you're giving yourself right now, is that similar or different than advice you would give to someone in their 40s or someone in their 20s?
Well, when I was sort of 15 and I was a troubled adolescent, very troubled actually. Well, those were difficult times. I thought that somewhere around 25, you pretty much got your shit together and then you just cruised. I got to 25 and that obviously hadn't happened. So I thought, well, I might as well have as much fun as I can because somewhere around 40, you go over the ridge and then it's all downhill from there. Well, that happened and that wasn't true. So now, there's this spiral and sometimes it feels like it's going up and sometimes it feels like it's going down. And, speaking of music and, the idea of resiliency, you got to honor the blues, you know? I mean, if we didn't have the blues, the music would all sound like Barry Manilow or worse. So there are times when I'm like, I gotta feel this feeling of being low energy, feeling super concerned about the world, and I just gotta move through it because then, you know, things will rise up again. There's a natural rise and fall to human emotions. If you are joyous for 3 straight days without sleeping, we call it mania,
Right. Right.
you know? Um, and there's this whole happiness industry now, which is like, there's elements of that that are valuable, but it's just like um, when I drop something on the floor in the kitchen, to be perfectly honest, I just pick it up and eat it. A little dirt is probably going to keep me as healthy as some antibacterial soap.
Right. Right. I'm always thinking if I pick something off the floor, I was like, I'm 46. If the things I've probably ingested by now, if they haven't taken me out,
Right.
some
Yeah.
dirt on the floor is probably gonna be all
Right.
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 Um, what advice do you give people who might be looking to practice a curious outlook and a curious way through life? Because I love that you mentioned you just have to feel the feel, right? You have to feel the
Mhm.
feels, and that's normal.
Right.
It's not,
Yeah.
it's admirable to not feel anything, right? And think that's fine.
Right.
But what is one for you? What advice do you even give yourself when it's sometimes easier to hide or collapse on the couch or be not curious?
Sometimes when I want to just be kind of brain dead, I will go on YouTube and watch like people falling on skis or natural disasters. I
Oh,
mean, I shouldn't be interested in that, but I don't care. There's something compelling about that. And the same way with food, there are things like when I'm traveling and I'm hungry and I'm tired and I just want to get to the hotel or whatever, I will pull into a freaking Burger King and get an Impossible meatless Whopper, you know? It's junk food, but you know what? I don't do it every day.
right.
So, don't set unrealistic high standards for yourself. There is no perfection. So, do your best to go with the flow and ride with the tide.
I love that. It makes me think of, because there's curiosity in that too. I talked to this with some friends of mine not too long ago of sometimes we position curiosity as one of those big buzzwords, right? Curiosity and creativity and up there with like synergy. And you're like, at a certain point, it starts to not mean a lot, right? Or it has this like, ah, category to it. Um, but there's curiosity in the, I feel like shit today.
Right.
I'm overstimulated. My brain is tired. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
sleep well last night. And you're just like, ugh. There's also a curiosity of allowing yourself to be like, what if I just vegged out and binged this show I love?
Mm-hmm.
That is awesome, but it's still
Right.
curiosity. I think sometimes we only label curiosity when it's like, you know, super positive and impactful and benefiting the world and,
Yeah. Right.
towards a goal.
Right. Right. No, you can be curious about things that other people would have no interest in whatsoever.
Yeah.
Years ago, I lived next door to the chief medical examiner for the state of Vermont. And I was taking a college course on death and dying. So I asked him if I could interview him. He
Wow.
said, yeah. He was a wonderful man. He was Quaker, actually. And so I went over and I said, Dr. Morrow, you have a job that's most people consider difficult or if not downright disgusting. How do you go to work every day and deal with dead bodies? He said, well, Flip, you're studying psychology, right? And I said, yeah. He goes, my worst nightmare is sitting in a little room all day listening to people's problems. The people I deal with, their problems are over. He said, I am providing a gift to the families. And I'm just a detective. I'm trying to figure out how did this person die?
Mm,
He said it's hard with the children and the victims of violence, but other than that, I'm just curious. How did they die?
mm, thank goodness we're all curious about different things.
Yeah, indeed. I couldn't do that job. I'd lose my lunch in the
Yeah,
first 10
no,
minutes.
I absolutely not. I can't even read WebMD without feeling lightheaded. So,
Yeah.
um, wow, it's such a beautiful um. I also love I I, I love these different communities that we all find ourselves in.
Hmm.
And I love, as much as the internet and technology has shaped our lives in so many ways, for good and for bad and for ambivalent and whatever, it's so flipping cool that it's never been easier to get curious and
Hmm.
learn about other people, other cultures, other ways of being, um, just from where you are. It's
Right.
such a
Right.
it's such a
Yeah, and I think that, the internet, I mean, I've had clients, all across the United States and globally, and there's so much information. As a musician, I think about how when we tried to get song lyrics, we would put the needle on the record, and what were they actually singing, in terms of the lyrics. And there's actually a website called kissthisguy.com that has all the misheard lyrics. Because was Jimi Hendrix singing "Excuse me while I kiss the sky" or "Excuse me while I kiss this guy"?
Oh,
um,
fair.
Yeah, and there's tons of those, and almost all of us have something that we thought we heard in terms of a lyric, but we were wrong. But the internet, you can always go to find out what the actual song lyrics were. So now,
Right.
if you want to learn a new song, you can get the chords and the lyrics without breaking a sweat.
Right, right. You're so right. I remember a couple songs because, when I was a teenager, there was no internet. And so you're listening over and over to learn the lyrics. And then, you know, we're somewhere else and you realize we've been singing this wrong the whole
Well, and John Fogerty actually at his concerts would sing what he thought, what we all thought we heard, and "Don't go out tonight, it's bound to take your life. There's a bathroom on the right."
That's fantastic.
So anyway, yeah, it's and the thing about the internet, I think, is that obviously there are dark corners, but that's been true of a lot of different,
Yeah.
human endeavors. So
Yeah.
it's just a matter of what's the feeling that you're getting, and is that the
Mm.
feeling that aligns with where you want to be in that moment?
Ooh, okay, this last question for you. Do you know wholeheartedly in yourself when you are feeling what you feel, when you are like, "Ooh, I'm gonna pursue this. I'm curious. This is a path that I'm going to inquire more about."
Never 100%, 100% of the time. I mean, it's awareness is a practice.
Mhm.
It's not it's not a given. And so, for example, my local grocery store had Ben and Jerry's at half price, $2.74 for a pint.
Oh my gosh.
And in spite of my better judgment, I bought 2 pints. Now, I have to watch my blood sugar. So this was a, guilty pleasure on the edge of not self-care. But you know what? My taste buds said, "Screw it. We're gonna do it this one time. For half price, we're gonna just go ahead and do it."
Right.
You know?
And they're
So
neighbors, like, you're just local, you're supporting.
yeah, yeah, and they've been a client of mine. When I was at Ben's house for a meeting, he had a walk-in freezer. Um, he also had quadruple bypass from his own product, you know, but the point was is that I knew I was doing something that on one level was unhealthy, and it was not something that I was going to repeat.
Yeah,
And I just said, "What the heck? I'm going to indulge, and then I'm going to cut back to compensate for that."
yeah. That whole idea of balance, but being aware of, I think, like you said, it comes back to that awareness of, "Yeah, I'm just gonna go fucking go for it and enjoy the
Right.
heck out of it, and
Right.
then obviously I'm not gonna do it tomorrow, I'm not gonna do the next," but to have that awareness as opposed to impulse or reaction.
Yep. And sometimes I get in my Honda Element, which has a 270-watt stereo system with 7 speakers and a built-in subwoofer, and I blow the dust off those speakers.
No doubt.
I am rocking down the highway. It's loud, but I want to feel the music. And
Mm,
other times it's like, "Oh no, turn it down. I want a sense of calm."
yeah.
So it's called being in the moment.
Well, thank you so much for the conversation and for bringing the element to this conversation about curiosity of one's own awareness and that reflective aspect that we need about
Yep.
it. Um, and slowing down to actually take the time to make decisions that are resonant with us. So thank you so much. I've had a lot of these great conversations about curiosity, but I really, really appreciate how you've brought that element into the practice.
Well, this is like jamming with another good musician. You brought your energy and your curiosity to the topic. That made it work.
All right, Flip. For anyone who wants to get in touch with you, follow your work, where can they find you?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn, Flip Brown. You can find me there with a search. My business website is called businesscultureconsultants.com. And then I actually have a podcast series called Holistic Work that you can find on Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and my website. It's called Holistic Work. And so, yeah, I would love to connect with anyone who's listening to this and continue the conversation.
Absolutely. And we'll make sure to get all those links from you and post them wherever they go on the YouTube and
Yep.
on the socials. So thank you so much, Flip, for your time.
My great pleasure. Thank
Till next
you. Okay. Bye.